evening. My name is Lisa Field. I'm president of the Labor Guild. Welcome to tonight's Conversation Corner, a series of talks about issues impacting the labor management community. First, a little bit about the Labor Guild. The Labor Guild promotes justice and good order in area workplaces by inspiring, motivating, and helping people act with conscience, know-how, and courage in labor management relations. The collective bargaining process drives wage equality and economic and social justice in a vibrant democracy. Since 1945, the Guild has provided training, support, and connection through programs such as this. I am so pleased to welcome back Tom Kemp from the Screen Actors Guild, American Federation of Television and Radio Artists, to discuss the recent SAG-AFTRA strike and the settlement. Tom is vice chair of SAG-AFTRA's negotiating committee and vice president, actor performer of the New England Local. Tom is here sharing his perspective as a member. So welcome, Tom. So great to see you. Let's kick things off.
Thank you. Thank you. Very good to see you again. Glad we could have this conversation. Yeah, we've been off of strike since the first week in November. Actually, you're still seeing some of the results of it because the Emmys last night were like delayed by 4 months because of our strike and of the writers' strike. And because of our strike, none of the actors would have been able to appear on the show. So they pushed it back, and I think people were commenting some of the shows that were nominated have already been canceled.
Oh boy.
They were nominated, back then.
Yeah.
We concluded our strike. It was a very long process, and we were on strike for over 100 days, 116 days, I think it was, something like that, and finally resolved it, and it was a very successful. If any strike can be successful, it was a successful strike. It'll always take a while for those people who are on strike to recover from the lost wages and such, but we felt it was worth it, and we got a great deal.
Great. So let's back up a little bit for those who might be watching that might not be familiar with who does SAG-AFTRA represent?
Well, SAG-AFTRA is Screen Actors Guild and the American Federation of Television and Radio Artists, and we merged about 11 or 12 years ago. And Screen Actors Guild represents the actors in the United States. Many of our members are also foreign who work here and join our union. And the American Federation of Television and Radio Artists actually started as the American Federation of Radio Artists to cover all those big broadcasts that were happening back in the 1920s and 1930s on radio. And after a while, with technology changes, which is also sort of what was a major factor in this strike, we found that we were competing with each other, and most of the actor members were members of both unions, and we were paying dues to two unions who were in conflict for the same work. And so we decided at one point to merge. I was actually also on that committee. I don't know how to say no, I guess. I was on that committee for the merger, and AFTRA also represents actors, but it also represents broadcasters. Most of your news people on the major television stations and your major markets, and many of your radio stations, the announcers on television, I think some of also writers and producers would be members of AFTRA. They could work during the strike because our contract was not, we're working under a different contract. But we're about 160,000 strong across the country in membership.
Wow, interesting. I think people always think that it's the actors, the members of SAG-AFTRA are either in Hollywood or in New York, but they're actually even here locally here in New England.
Oh yeah, I think we have about 4,000 members in this local. Wow. And it's a nationwide industry at this point. Um, I think the third largest production center is in Atlanta, Georgia.
Wow.
And Chicago has an awful lot. New England had been having a lot before the strike, and it's starting to ramp up now because we usually get a lot more film here than television series.
Mhm.
So after the strike, Los Angeles and New York went back to work a little more quickly because the TV shows were ready to go into production. They've been ready for a while. It was actually very helpful. Some of our members were under contract as series regulars on some of the television shows. And when we were coming down to the final hours, they had been told that they would be reporting back to work at a certain date. And so we kind of used that as leverage against the producers to say, okay, you want a television season? Well,
Mhm.
these last few items,
Mhm.
you can have one.
Mhm.
Otherwise, no.
Right.
Um, so, yes, we had members from Chicago, Atlanta, Texas, Nashville, Washington, D.C., all represented in that room in our negotiating committee, just to make sure that we covered all the issues that were relevant to those regions. There's lots of different laws. I mean, the right to work legislation that's in Texas and Georgia um, creates issues internally for us when we're trying to negotiate some issues. Um, but we stuck together and then we found a common ground and we made a great contract.
Great. So, if you could just remind the audience, what were the issues, the big issues as to why did you, I mean, no union wants to go out on strike, but you felt you had to go out on strike to resolve these issues. What were the big ones?
Yeah, I would say the big one was wages. Is everybody, and that's the same, I'm sure, for every union. We've gone through this period since COVID of really big inflation that really destroyed our money, and also from actually beginning before COVID, but is accelerated during COVID, was people's viewing habits changed really to streaming. Most people watch their TV shows and their movies streamed, and our residual structure had not kept up with that change. It was a fairly rapid change. It used to be that the streamers were the end of the process, end of the viewing cycle, if you will, and became the primary one. And our residuals did not keep up with that. So we needed residual increases in streaming. Also, AI, artificial intelligence, is looming, and it's really close. And we understood that it would be a threat to actors making a living if they could just take our images and such and manufacture a synthetic human or synthetic me, and I would be out of work. And the studios, of course, didn't want to pay for that or even get permission for that. They've used it somewhat. I think the last Star Wars movie, there was one of the major characters was deceased, and they were able to at least manufacture an image of him, Peter Cushing, that was passable. Right now, AI is extremely expensive for to make a synthetic human, but that cost will be coming down, and so we could not leave the table without protections and guardrails around AI. There are a lot of people that are very afraid of it, and I understand that. Sometimes it borders on paranoia, but people are concerned, and rightfully so. So what we tried to do was to make sure that we could get in this contract guardrails around that. There are also many other issues. I was saying earlier that when I went back to my notes to have this kind of conversation, I had a notebook that was this thick, and I'm trying to get what was relevant or germane. Another thing that doesn't cost any money but affected actors was the way we auditioned for work had changed. We now self-tape. We put our auditions down at some friend's house or my house, make a video and email it, upload it to agents or casting directors. And that was getting out of control. And so we needed to control that. How much material do they want? When do they want it? How quickly do they want it? And that was a really big issue for a lot of actors. We also had issues that related to stunt people, singers, and dancers. We cover all of them as well, and intimacy coordinators. When people are doing scenes where you're very exposed, there's a lot of sexual content. We wanted to have a person, an intimacy coordinator, that would basically manage the relationship between those two people so that they could do a scene that's believable to the audience, but also acknowledges that these people aren't really married. they have families, and to protect them in those situations. And we needed to get that into the contract as well. And there were a lot of other things that had developed over the last 3 or 4 years. And with streaming, it wasn't simply the residuals that went to the individuals who were in the shows that were running. What we had done, or what had happened, was that streaming was built on all these shows that really weren't the big ones. They were just filled out the library so that people would go to Netflix, they would go to Paramount Plus, they would go to Hulu, they would go to Amazon Prime to get their product. And what we wanted was for a share of that. And that was a really new concept. And that concept was one that they were not ready to agree to for quite a while. And so we did accomplish that in the contract. Also, background actors, we felt, who are kind of on the low end of the pay scale, they were not being compensated, we felt, fairly. And there were different rules about the numbers of background players you had to hire in the East Coast than in the West Coast. And that was something that we wanted to equalize, because the producers had used that as leverage against us in past negotiations. Oh, you want all this? Well, how about we give you a little bit more background positions on the West Coast? Right. So I think those were the main things. There were a lot of other things that were really important that weren't in the top 4 or 5. And there's a lot of television shows now that are shot, say, in Atlanta or Chicago or Vancouver or Toronto or Montreal, where the actors are coming from New York or Boston or Los Angeles. and they're living away from home. And so the relocation fees that they would get were just not keeping up with the cost of making a second home
Mhm.
for yourself and maintaining the one back home. So we needed to address those as well. So you can tell by my rambling on here that there's a lot in this contract, and we got this contract was worth over $1 billion. So
Wow.
this was the biggest contract, I think, in the entertainment industry history.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'll take a breath.
$1 million. Wow.
$1 billion. You know.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah. So that's remarkable.
It is remarkable. And I think that during the strike, I think a lot of us who are not in the entertainment industry were surprised, because I think when people think of SAG-AFTRA, you think of the top tiered, who make a lot of money, and not realize, there's a lot of people that don't make the top tier.
Yes, it's really it's working class. It's a working class union, and fortunately, those people who do make a lot of money appreciate the fact that they're very fortunate and that they started out um, working for scale, trying really hard just to get a job, and they were lucky enough to succeed. During the strike, we wanted to raise some money through the foundation, the SAG-AFTRA Foundation, for emergency costs that people would have if they were losing their rent, if they needed just some money, as everybody who's out of work does. And The Rock, Johnson, came up and gave over $1 million to the fund just to give it to folks. And then others followed, and Meryl Streep said, "Look, I was a waitress, I'm going to give them $1 million." So it was a really wonderful solidarity thing. But to put it in context, our union offers health insurance to our members, but you have to make about $26,000 a year to qualify, and only about 15% of our membership qualifies for the health insurance. So that just gives you a sense of where people are economically in this union. Evidently, Lisa has lost power, so I think I will just keep talking.
Yeah, go ahead, Tom. We apologize, folks. Lisa Field just lost power. But yeah, Tom, please continue. It's wonderful hearing your feedback and
Okay.
some more insight into this. So please carry on.
Sure. A lot of people were very surprised that we went on strike this time. I've been on the negotiating committee several times. I think this is maybe my sixth or my seventh negotiation, and we just ended up having to go on strike because we were not getting anywhere with the people that we normally would audition with. Negotiate with. And things just weren't moving. And so in middle of July, we just said, look, we're going to go on strike. Nothing's happening here. There were big issues, granted, that were new to the contract, and these people just, I didn't think, had the authority really to say yes. And so we finally said in July 12th, we're going to walk away from the table. And then they decided at that point that they weren't going to talk to us anymore. And we had to explain to them that, you know how strikes end, don't you?
Mm.
People talk. And it can be a one-day strike, it can be a one-year strike, but at the end of it, people have talked. So we did that. But then it was about 3 months before we resumed talks. And we had to talk with the CEOs of all the major studios and networks and such, banded together, and they put 4 people to represent them as all the producers. And actually, that was really good because they're the people that can actually say yes. The other people that would have to run it up, the chain of command, but the 4, Bob Iger from Disney, Donna Langley from Universal, Ted Sarandos from Netflix, and David Zaslav from Warner Brothers and HBO were the 4 that talked to us. And they only wanted to talk to a small part of our committee. So I was one of the 6 people on our side of the table. There are 6 people on their side of the table. And those talks broke down twice because they just thought that we were asking for too much. We were asking for a lot, but we were asking for what we needed. Not overboard in any way. So I still have bad feelings about how these people treated our union and all the other people that were out of work because of our union. They waited 3 months. I think they wanted to starve us. I think they wanted to test our solidarity. I think they wanted to weaken our position, our bargaining position, but it didn't work. Our membership knew that these issues that we were fighting for were worthwhile. And when I was in Los Angeles for negotiations, when I didn't have to be in the room, or we were having our meetings in the afternoon on some days, I would go to a picket line usually at the Fox studios, and would talk to all the people, walk the picket line with everybody. And they all knew the issues, and they were all in solidarity with us. They said, no, don't walk away. This is worth it. And we knew with AI that we had to get a solution. We had to sort of button up as much as we possibly could. Any of the loopholes, any of the dangerous kind of just those sort of places where they could take advantage of actors. When we first started talking about AI, I mean, what the studio's position was that if you're a background actor, they wanted to be able to hire you for the day, about $200, and they wanted to be able to scan you, get all your information into an AI machine, and then manufacture other clones of you and put them in the background and not pay you a dime and not get your permission. And we said, well, yeah, no, that doesn't work. And so what we were stressing was you need to have consent and compensation, and that consent has to be an informed consent. Exactly what are you going to use my digital replica for? In some cases, like me, if I was in a scene and they realized in post-production, oh, we need Tom in another scene in this movie, and the set is struck, the crew has moved on, everybody's gone, maybe they could use a digital me to put in that scene. They would have to get my consent, and they would have to pay me for that. And they would have to tell me exactly what they were using that for. It looks like the legislation that's proposed in Congress about AI, it looks like it's based somewhat on our contract. The lawyers that we had working with us and the AI experts that we had working with us sort of felt that that was where we were, that we were setting the template, because no other union had negotiated any AI contracts. And so we were really the first. So we took that seriously, and we felt that it would be a template for other unions, but also for legislation. And it seems that that consent and compensation, or at least consent in many in the proposed legislation, is what will be the basis of any laws. The producers were reluctant to talk about it for a couple of reasons, but one also was that nobody knew where this was going legally. There were lawsuits out there that were pending. Sarah Silverman's and then a group of top American writers was suing the ChatGPT for using their words, their copyrighted material, without getting their consent or paying them for it. And so the producers were reluctant to negotiate because they didn't know where the law was going to be. So they said, well, why don't we talk about this later? And we said, yeah, we'll talk about it later. But we're also talking about it now, and we're also going to get protections now. And so that's how it came down. But it was very complicated. And I remember talking to I think the man was from Universal, and he was saying, but now say I have Tom and Angelina Jolie, and I morph them through AI, and whose permission would I have to get? And well, we said, well, both of us. You'd probably have to pay her more, but and that would be a very strange creation. But yeah, so we just couldn't leave that on the table. Some of the other stuff, the wages, we just had to have, and we also needed to increase the amount of money that was given to our health and pension plans, because COVID had really hurt our plans, because money was still going out, but people weren't contributing because the business had shut down. So we needed to do that, and the way we did it was there's a cap. You make a certain amount of money and you pay on top, you pay the pension and health, but above that, you don't pay any more. So what we did was we raised those caps quite dramatically. And they hadn't been raised for like 40 years, which was insane. But that was the way we decided we wanted to go, to raise the contributions, and we did. And so I think we've made our health and pension plan solvent again. Now I see Lisa in the dark there.
We lost power.
My goodness, still have power here. So,
Knock on wood. Knock on wood. I'm on my phone.
okay.
So there. Very interesting. It's very interesting. So what would you say, when I hear when you discuss about how, there's still some bad feelings, given all that was going on, I would say that's very common. I work for a nurses union, and, we have had some very contentious strikes. It's always hard, right afterwards, going back, kind of how do you rebuild that relationship again, between labor and management? And it takes some time to heal some of those wounds, let's be frank about it,
Yeah, because we felt, we felt that they could have come back to the table much sooner, and talked, but they didn't. One of the things, though, that's interesting is, particularly with the AI issue, the artificial intelligence, we're kind of on the same team with the producers, because what's happening is that their copyrighted material is being stolen by all these other tech firms or these people, sole proprietors or something of high-tech machinery, and their copyrighted material is us. And so it behooved both sides to have a really good relationship, really good contractual relationship, and know what the limits and the were, and knew what the restrictions were, so that we could just work and they could plan, and we could both fight those people who steal our images and their copyrighted material.
Mm-hmm.
I think that might help a little bit in the future. I think also that one of these CEOs that was in the room, what he was looking for, and I hope we've accomplished it actually, is that we've set up a contract this time that will not necessitate a strike next time, that we have covered all of the subjects that we need to cover, and that what we will do is just make improvements or adjustments in the next round of negotiations. And that was one of our goals, was to make a foundational kind of contract that we can build on. There were certain things that we got in this contract for the first time ever, performance capture, which would be, for those of you who watch movies, the blue people from Avatar, who were actually real actors who were working in these what they call volumes, and with all these little dots and all these little cameras, and that had never been covered in the contract. We got that in the contract. We didn't get as much coverage as we want, but now it is in the contract, so it has to be discussed next time. So we wanted to build this revenue share from streaming and put it in the contract, so that next time we negotiate this contract, we can just adjust it. We don't have to introduce it all over again. And with AI, if we need any adjustments, and we will be talking, it's in the contract, we're going to be talking with the producers every 6 months about developments, legal and otherwise, in AI. So we wanted to set up a contract that we could work with. Fran Drescher, our president and the chairman, just said, you know, after we got this contract done, and it was kind of a shock the day it happened, we had said to them, you know, we got these 5 issues left. If you come across, we will the next day suspend the strike and you guys can go back to work. But these are critical. We have to have these 5. If we don't have all 5 of these, we're still on strike. And as soon as we got those, Fran says, okay, let's start planning for the next contract. As we have built a foundation that we can build on. So I think certainly those of us on the negotiating team who were so involved thought that was also a really good accomplishment for us.
So this year, I mean, in 2023, it was SAG-AFTRA and the Writers Guild contracts were up. And then next year in the entertainment business, it's the Teamsters and IATSE that are up. You know, when you work in an industry, it's not just one, you know, we touched before we went on Facebook Live here tonight about how it's not just the implications of when you all went on strike. Same with the Writers Guild. There were implications on other unions as well as other businesses, other folks. If you could just talk a little bit about that, kind of how it kind of reverberated throughout the entire industry.
Yes, and we got support, you know, from the writers and from IA and from the Teamsters, which was really great. was walking picket lines with guys from IA and women from the Writers Guild. It was really great. One of the things that we did, it might be unique to our negotiations in this business, is that there is what they call pattern bargaining, and the producers want to, if they give in their contract negotiations a 5% raise or 3% raise to the first union, they want to do that to all the unions.
Mhm.
We weren't going to go for it this year because our people don't make as much as some of the writers or the directors, so we needed a larger raise, and we got a really good one. We broke pattern, and we broke it really good for background players got a really outsized increase. But I think it may help our brothers and sisters at IA and the Teamsters to know that the pattern has been broken. That is one of the reasons they were so reluctant to do it, was because with IA and the Teamsters coming up, they knew on the table that SAG-AFTRA had broken pattern on raises, and we will support them. I mean, in our contract, we have to go to work if they're on strike, but we could show up. There'd be nobody to do our makeup. There'd be nobody to do our costumes. There'd be no cameramen. There would be no lighting guys. There would be no sound. So we say, "Okay, I'm here," but it would shut down the industry again. I hope that this long summer of strikes just sort of reformed the business and people's attitudes towards unions. This is a very collaborative art form, and I think producers understand that now, and that we're not going to sit back and take it. And so I think that's why I'm hoping that my brothers and sisters in IA get a really good deal. And I think the attitude of the AMPTP will be a little bit better than it normally would be.
So now that you've been through kind of from the beginning of bargaining, the prep for bargaining, and then the strike, and then the resolution, what do you think the lessons are of the SAG-AFTRA experience and win, the win in the settlement? What do you think lessons are there for other unions to catch on to learn from your story?
Well, I think you have to focus on what's important, and you have to, unfortunately for us this time around, there was a lot that was important that we needed to get. Jesse Winchester, when he was asked about writing songs, said, he said, "You say what you have to say and you don't say anything else." So I think that when you're putting your package together, you need to have a robust system of vetting these ideas and really get your solidarity from your union behind them. You need to be able to tell your membership, this is what's important. This is what we're going after. Sometimes that's difficult. It's difficult for your membership to accept because a negotiation is not a shopping spree. It's a negotiation, and you can set your sights on certain numbers and things like that, and you might not achieve them, but in fact you have achieved a success. And not to make what perfect the enemy of good, or whatever it is, whatever that phrase is, and you have to understand that management sometimes can be a little bit nasty. And that's why solidarity is important.
Mhm.
That's why solidarity is so important. And you get solidarity through being open with your members about when we went on strike, we put out a document that said, this is where we are on this subject, that's where they are. So the openness with your membership, I think, is really important.
Great points. Great points. Thank you for that. We're going to pause here for the moment. Andrew, is there any questions in the Facebook chat?
None that I'm seeing. Let me just refresh it very quickly. Been trying to keep up with it.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, nothing. But we did have someone just say thank you for an excellent program, and all the info on AI in particular was very insightful.
Great, thank you.
That's something that's, when we were at a rally at the NAACP convention, they invited us over there when we were on strike, and many unions showed up to support us. And after the rally, I was talking to the teachers, the representative of the teachers union, and they were saying AI is an important subject for us. We're going to have to be tackling that. And it sort of woke me up to the fact that it affects a lot of other businesses and things, a lot of other professions that you might not think it did.
Exactly. I think one big lesson out of your struggle was exactly that, putting AI right there out in the forefront for all of us, no matter what industry we're in, to really have a discussion and really hard look at, what is it? What is it, and how does it interact with the work that we do?
Yeah, because it's for us, it's not, the use isn't rampant right now because it's so expensive, but you just need to put the parameters in place early on in the process, before it's too late, before
Right.
the cow is out of the barn. So that's what we felt we needed to do. And we talked to a lot of people who do it,
Mhm.
who are on the technical side. And luckily, our lawyers, our in-house legal counsel, have been dealing with protections of image and voice for people for a long time. So they had a really good handle on that subject. And so for other unions, you need to really get good consultation about where is this business going and how does this affect you.
And I have power. Woo!
You have power. Let there be light. Yeah.
There be light. Came back on.
Yeah.
Hey, Tom, sorry, we did just get a couple of questions that just came in. I know we're probably trying to keep this pretty quick here, but can you speak to a few more of the guardrails that the industry or maybe the union is looking to put in regards to AI? I don't know if you might have already covered some of that, but
Yeah, I mean, it's a very complex field. The byword is consent and compensation, and we did talk a lot with actually the intellectual property lawyers from the other studios to find a language that we felt was adequate for that consent. What does that consent entail? What is adequate consent? And they wanted to call a duplicate of me if I'm in the movie, an employed, forget what it was, an employed, and it rose from my employment. But there's also they could use my footage from other movies to manufacture me, and that would be a different category. But still the consent and the compensation has to be required. But say I was in a movie and I'm sitting at one end of the table in this shot, and they want to put me at another end of the table in that scene when they realize, oh no, he has to be over there. And they do that digitally, or they do that through AI. I have to give my permission, but I don't have to be compensated again because I've already compensated for that scene.
Mhm.
But if they put me in a new scene, they have to compensate me for doing that. The question that a lot of people had was like completely generative AI, which they completely make up from my information or something. And that's, I think, what some of the writers are dealing with. We didn't think that we could control what went in to these machines. We felt what we had to do was control what came out of them. So when you wanted to use it, that's when the permission would have to be gained, and you would have to negotiate a compensation for that. Right now, it's really expensive to generate one of these people, but it won't be. I was in a meeting when I was across the table from the CEOs, and some people had worried that they had been scanned doing background work. And what are they doing with that information? And I asked the CEOs, what do you do with that information? If you scan someone, a background player, do you keep it? And actually, it was Ted Sarandos from Netflix said, no, we get rid of it right away. And the other three nodded in agreement, because he said, right now, it is so expensive to store it. It's such a huge file. It's an enormous file of information. And he said, the storage is so expensive that we just get rid of it and we will start fresh on the next project. That may not always be the case. They may find streamlines in that situation that might not be as expensive to store those images and all that information. But what we needed to do was say, every time you use it, every time you contemplate using it, you have to give us 48 hours notice, and it has to be quite specific about where you're using it and how you're using it. Like an actor who did a background scene, if they scanned him and they wanted to put his image twice more in that same scene, they would have to pay him twice more for that. And they would have to explain to him that that's what they were going to do. And the reason they had to do it was because of whatever. But that consent has to be informed. Anything else? Does that answer that question?
Yeah, that was interesting. And I can see how complex it is. It sounds very complex. Yep.
There were like, days and days and days of just trying to understand it from both sides.
Right.
Really from both sides, because they didn't want to. They do a lot right now with CGI and other special effects that aren't AI. And what they were worried about was that any of this, these parameters that we were putting on this usage would affect that. And we had to say, no, we're not talking about that. CGI is You can do anything you want with special effects. You always have. And no, it's the generation of people. Now, CGI and AI may blend in the next 6 months or a year. So we just couldn't walk away from the table without those limits.
Mhm. And you do have in your contract that you have to meet with them every 6 months. Did I understand that?
Yeah.
So at development, that's good language right there, right? Because it's so rapidly developing.
So rapidly developing, it's changing, and legally, lawsuits, all that stuff is going to impact it. And we just have to have an open and continuing conversation. And also, as I mentioned before, if somebody else starts to poach their information, their copyrighted material, which is us, and the Writers Guild writings, then you have to, we need to discuss and have that system in place where we just say, okay, at this meeting, let's meet this week, twice a year and every 6 months at least, so we can keep up with each other.
Great. Andrew, are there any other questions?
Seeing none.
That was a good question.
But thank you for the explanation for that. A lot of people commented how obviously anything AI is so topical, right? And people were very happy with all that insight, Tom. So thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you. So any last thoughts with us tonight, Tom?
Well, I don't know. I think this was a very grueling negotiation. I was quite surprised at the end of it when we realized, oh, we walked in this morning and, having given that ultimatum, and they agreed to it. And we went, oh, wow. We thought we were in for another week or two. And when the microphone was passed around the room for people to vote, and in fact, it passed unanimously, which has never happened. In 17, we have 17 votes. We have alternates and we have bullpen alternates and such, but only 17 votes, and it would pass 17-0. But when people got the microphone, they were quite surprised at how emotional they were. They didn't think they were going to break down or be overcome, and I was, and I wasn't expecting that, but we sort of realized that we had done something that was kind of monumental, and it changed the future for our union and the young actors coming up who are just starting out, who aren't worried about a pension, aren't maybe not even worried about health care, but we've protected them from the technology that we think is coming. And I just thought of my grandfather, who was an immigrant from Northern Ireland and worked as a laborer his whole life, and yet had a decent retirement because he was a member of a union. And it just struck me, maybe because I'm an actor, but I had been really active in the labor end of it, the union end of it. It just struck me at that moment, that I had sort of followed in his footsteps. And it was, and then we went that night. I went that night to a bar that was when they announced to everybody that we had ended the strike, or that we had a deal. All the strike captains and all the young actors who had been walking on the picket lines, just the elation and the joy was just so moving. I think we're all proud of what we've done and what we've accomplished for generations. Yeah, that's my final my final thought.
Well, congratulations. What great work. Congratulations.
And $1 billion.
Yeah, yeah. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Well, on that note, I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. To learn more about the Labor Guild, check out our website at laborguild.com. Thank you so much, Tom. It's always a pleasure. Come back again. Always a pleasure.
Well, maybe just socially, Lisa.
Yeah. Or maybe on a panel about AI. We'll tell you about the rest of the industries, and you can give us your wisdom.
Yeah, we'll see what happens this summer with the IA and the Teamsters.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, and good night, everybody.
Good night.